Welcome back, everybody. It is all about the insanity defense in the trial against Timothy Jones Jr. out of South Carolina. The defense is now in their third day trying to show that Jones was legally insane at the time he allegedly killed his 5 children. When the defendant was interviewed about the murders, he indicated, though, he was suspicious that there may have been something wrong with him. Terry, I want to note that the FBI is actually crafting the legal insanity definition, the law, into their line of questioning, asking, did you know this was against the law? Did you know this was right or wrong? Based upon what you've heard, is this qualify as insanity?
Well, I think he's being coached. He's saying all the right things, and I think if they can...
Coached by who at this point?
Well, I think initially he was coached by his attorneys, but he knows what to say in order to look like he was crazy. He didn't know the difference between right and wrong, and he was compelled to do this because he thought his children were conspiring. I don't.
You don't believe what he's saying when I didn't know, I wasn't thinking about the law, because then the question is, why did he drive around with the bodies?
Exactly. Why did he try to cover it up? So I think he is saying what he's supposed to say so that he looks as though he has been insane.
We also learned last week, though, from his grandmother that he's had quite the history. You know, sometimes, I mean, you could look at defendants and say, well, you know, he had a tough upbringing and there was a whole family history of mental illness and abuse, and you could argue that perhaps maybe the jury will think twice about this insanity defense here. What do you make of that?
It's interesting you raised the grandmother. I think she was very credible, and she did show a picture of a very difficult upbringing. His mother was out of the picture most of the time,
right,
and they didn't have great circumstances. But she did also say that he went to college and he was providing for the family, he had a job. Even when he had his accident at the age of 15, she said, I thought he was okay after that.
Right, and that's the big thing. And then another way of looking at it is, you know, juries are very skeptical of the insanity defense because they can say, hey, everybody's had a tough life. Doesn't mean they go around killing their children. So it's really that really, really rare threshold. And South Carolina's tougher to prove insanity than maybe other states.
Right, exactly. And I think that they're going to have a hard time here, particularly since this witness, as the grandmother, she really didn't say, oh, I think he was insane. She basically made it seem like, to your point, he had a rough life, but he was managing it.
Right. Well, there was another thing that I want to mention. You know, Jones detailed to a psychiatrist a long history of mental health problems, but how reliable is he when he's reporting those symptoms? Let's listen to the cross-examination of that doctor. At the end of the day, do we just take the defendant's word for what it is? I mean, and I like this witness because he was pretty steadfast in his analysis and what he did review and what he didn't review. What do you think about that?
I think that we can't take the witness, not this witness, but the defendant at his word. You know, in South Carolina, insanity is an affirmative defense.
Right.
And so you simply have to show that he didn't recognize his actions were wrong at the time. And if they can prove that, then they have a good chance, but I don't know in this case if that's going to happen.
I mean, I do like this witness because of how forceful he was in terms of his opinion, but one thing he didn't say was that the defendant met the legal definition of insanity. He didn't even review him about that, the actual killing. He
didn't. He just went over the, elements. He didn't really say anything about the defendant himself.
And that's a thing, a mental leap for the jury to ultimately take here. So what do you think is going on in the minds of the jury as we enter into another day of the defense putting on their insanity case?
I think they're going to have to look at the defendant himself and listen to what all of the experts are saying, listen to the testimony, the previous testimony from the defendant, and make up their own minds as to whether or not at the time he committed these crimes, he knew whether this was right or wrong.
Easier said than done. I'll tell you what, though, we're getting word that we have a live feed in the courtroom right now. It appears to be a video interview. On the stand is Dr. Jonathan Joseph Littman. He's a neuropharmacologist, so as we talk about the insanity defense, we know which way this is going. Let's go live. Terri, this is all well and good, but just because someone has a mental disease or a condition of some sort doesn't automatically trigger the insanity defense, right? Doesn't the defense have to do something more here?
Absolutely. They have to show that he was unable to make decisions, that he, at the moment of the crime, didn't understand what he should be doing that's right and what is wrong.
Well, as he admitted in his interview, he knew at the very least that killing his children would result in their death. So there was a conscious thought there that he knew what he was doing. I'll tell you what, let's take a break. When we come back, we're either going to jump live or have a lot more to discuss. Stay tuned here on Law and Crime. We'll be right back.